All right, everybody, welcome back to Beans No Ball here for the Week 14 recap. Obviously, definitely had a pretty wild week of football to get into, so obviously, let's just get right into it Thursday night.
Yeah, so let's kick it off with this Thursday nighter that we expect to be a pretty boring game, but I honestly came out to be on really surprising. I mean, the New England Patriots. So let's get it started with this team. They really got away with this. Not well. I guess you could say kind of got away with this, and they had a pretty good lead at halftime, and then they're starting to Pittsburgh Steelers were starting to pick it up. But let's start off with Bailey Zappi. I mean, he was really driving this Patriots team after always all the controversy with Mac Jones and his whatever he's been doing this whole season that wasn't really leading to the Patriots, and not exceeding expectations from the offseason. It was just really a big slump for the New England Patriots this season. Bailey Zappi getting the start. Who knows? Again, I'm not gonna say it again. We know have our things with like one game wonders here and there, so I don't want to speak too early. But coming off this Pittsburgh Steelers team that's supposed to be one of the teams in the AFC, I guess losing Matt Canada, it really didn't make a difference. If anything, they became worse without him. Pickens is still not getting involved. Mr. Trubisky, which I would have hoped Mr. Trubisky to kind of pick up the Steelers a little bit more, but he really couldn't get anything done towards the end. But obviously, they still came up short. So their season for the Steelers, it's a lot in jeopardy right now, especially how really good this AFC conference is. A lot of teams are still in position to make a wild card.
Yeah, obviously, definitely, like you said, a big surprise there. But we will see how. If the way Mike Tomlin's season is looking, if he will fall to below 500 for the first time. Of course, moving into the Sunday slate, and definitely another pretty, I guess you could say, a surprising game to see this one kind of turn into a shootout at the end with the Buccaneers and the Falcons. Obviously, here and basically, to see who can come out on top. See if we get a losing record to win this division. And let's just get started with the Falcons, man. They just found a way to lose. They once again find a way to lose. We even see Younghoe Koo miss a field goal, which obviously he had just recently become the most accurate kicker, just over Justin Tucker, and he kind of just he gives that title right back to Justin Tucker with that miss. But Baker Mayfield, what a great game for him. Obviously, we were kind of talking about it for a bit during this game, that it was kind of, it looked like he was kind of going back to his old ways, but he definitely clutched up when it mattered most and led the Bucs to a very much needed win here, which with this win they do for the moment hold first place with all the tiebreakers here in the NFC South. So we will just have to wait and see how it all turns out, but definitely a very important win for the Bucs here.
Yeah, obviously it was an AFC South battle. That division is still for grabs for the Falcons, Bucs, and the Saints. So it's gonna be an ugly matchup, especially in this game. But as we like to see, Baker led this team and got away with the win here. Now moving on to another surprising win here in the NFC North. Detroit Lions fall to the Chicago Bears, and this is a Chicago Bears team that really wasn't looking that well to begin the season, especially with the Justin Fields injury to top it off that. But him coming back, the Bears they've been winning their last couple of games, especially against the Detroit Lions team that was supposed to be living up to the expectation of being good this season, but they're finally in a slump. And I think me and you we kind of had like a little thing about this with like Jared Goff's looking like his old self again from 2019. The first half of the game, it was just all Chicago. The defense was really stepping it up. Justin Fields was really leading that team down the field and scoring on pretty much almost every possession. And the Detroit Lions defense was finally starting to look like the defense of last year. I don't know what Dan Campbell's cooking up with this play calling and the coordinators. You can put the blame on him, put the blame on Goff, you can put it on anybody. But it's just they look really dysfunctional against this Bear in that game against the Bears, and you would have expected the Lions to pretty much beat the Bears here. Their first matchup earlier in the season, it was a really close game, but you kind of expect a team like Detroit to hopefully pick it up, especially the ways they've changed. But Jared Goff really wasn't helping, neither was that defense, and Justin Fields. We've had our stuff about Justin Fields. He looked pretty good that game. Don't get me wrong, but both sides of the ball for that Bears team are really stepping up, and the fact that looking at this NFC team as well, they could also come away with a wild card spot. They play their cards right. Obviously, looking at all the potentials of the other teams.
Yeah, obviously, little by little, my take on Justin Fields is looking slightly better, at least maybe for the upcoming seasons. But of course, let's move it back into the AFC here with the Colts and the Bengals. And this one definitely another, I guess, for our prediction, this was very much a big surprise. The big narrative here, can Jake Browning actually, do the unthinkable and actually lead the Bengals to the playoffs? To this point, I mean, honestly, I'm gonna say no. I really don't think it's gonna be enough. It's gonna just be a little too late. But he's definitely gonna make a push for them. It's definitely gonna be close. I mean, right now they're still above 500, which is a lot more than a lot of teams can say to this point. But I mean, he's definitely doing the most he can for with Joe Burrow's absence, and right now I forget who it was, but there was also a big play for a rookie running back for the Bengals in this game. So a lot of the lesser known guys are really stepping up right now. And of course, on the run game, Joe Mixon did have a pretty respectable game for himself. Obviously, he got himself back into the end zone as well. But as for the Colts, I mean, this has to be a rock bottom type loss. I mean, they definitely needed this win here. I mean, the division is kind of slightly falling off. So there's only one team did get a win, and we will get into that later. But with the way it was looking, this did look like a point that they definitely could have gained some ground, really solidified themselves into that playoff push. And a loss right here definitely is going to hurt those playoff chances.
Yeah, obviously these two teams are looking for a playoff push, and Jake Browning, he's really keeping the Bengals in the race here. But like I said, this AFC, it's really packed, so a push for that, it's gonna take a lot more than just Jake Browning. And now moving on to another game, which wasn't as surprising to see to win this here with the Jaguars and the Browns. Let's just get started with the GOAT Joe Flacco. I mean, he doesn't lose in that stadium. He does not lose in that stadium. Back in the AFC North, he just can't lose at all in the stadium. And he was really putting on a show in the first half, really leading that Cleveland offense. And this Cleveland team in general has been having problems with the quarterback. I mean, Deshaun Watson, was being serviceable for the most part in the beginning of the season. Defense was looking like a number one defense in the league, really pushing them to make a push in the season. Beating the Niners, that was a really big momentum change. PJ Walker, Deshaun Watson again, his injury, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a lot of situations going up, and then they picked up Flacco not that long ago, which is it was a pretty great pickup. Flacco can still ball. I mean, he had that pretty decent game against the Rams, and he looked right here. He looked like prime Joe Flacco from the Ravens. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it was a really great game from Joe Flacco. He's the player of the game here for the Cleveland Browns. The Jacksonville Jaguars, on the other hand, even with Trevor Lawrence coming back, that's the reason I did pick the Jaguars for this, mainly Trevor Lawrence, but he just had a shitter, man. That defense is really getting into it once again. They were starting to pick it up later in the game in the second half. It's kind of getting close, but Joe Flacco, look at him again, clutching up that clutch gene, using it when it really matters, and keeping the Browns alive in this playoff race as well. With that in the Jacksonville Jaguars and this AFC South, with how the Titans are now, which we will get into later, this division now, it's pretty much more wide open than it usually is.
Yeah, obviously this AFC North is an absolute dogfight. Everyone above 500. We'll have to wait and see. That pick, even with all the injuries, that pick for the Browns to take the North might come into payoff. Of course, getting back into the polar opposite of that division in the NFC South. I guess this one was a little more expected. When you think the Saints and the Panthers here, and I mean, what can we say here? I mean, pray for Bryce Young, man. It was just another horrible game for the Panthers. I mean, Bryce does what he can, but it's can't do much when don't have weapons, and obviously when your O-line can't block for shit. So I mean, they were in the game. Surprisingly enough, it was a relatively close game. I mean, only a 2-score game going into half. Even more surprising because Bryce Young only had 3 completions for 29 yards. It shows, the incompetence of this team as a whole. But of course, the Saints did pull away as expected in the end. Derek Carr, I mean, battling through injury and everything, he actually, he did what he could. I mean, we've kind of been dogging on him at times. He probably hasn't lived up to potential. I mean, even a lot of his teammates have kind of come out, maybe a little sneakily, maybe actually, just to say it, but does look like he might be losing that locker room bit by bit. But at the end of the day, it was a big win for the Saints. Obviously, as I did mention, this any win counts. As very likely to see a sub 500 team into the playoffs in this division, and we will just have to wait and see. This division is just going to turn out to see who can lose this division in the funnier way.
Yeah, obviously, what's really holding back the Saints is the quarterback situation with Derek Carr. Sure, he was playing injured, but regardless of that, his quarterback play still being downplayed. So obviously, locker room's going to lose faith in him. Now moving on to another pretty surprising game, transition back to the AFC South. These New York Jets coming away with the win against this Houston Texans team. So obviously Zach Wilson, I mean, he probably had arguably the best game of his career on Sunday. He put on a show against a really young, great Texans team that's really been making a push this season as well. But you just gotta really feel for Zach Wilson, man. That the stuff he was going through last season, this season, with the Rodgers injury, him stepping up, the defense, being elite, but obviously him not leading that offense to the potential to, obviously even out, to less stress on the defense. A lot of things with benching, Salah losing hope in him, Salah getting hope on him once again, and then the team just losing faith in him. But it was a really, really, really great executed game by Zach Wilson. Finally, him getting involved, O-line finally blocking, getting his weapons like Gary Wilson involved a little bit more. And that defense of the Jets, obviously it was a close game between these two, but the Jets defense once again stepping in with it really matters. Like dogs like Sauce Gardner, and then Quentin Williams. Those two dogs on that defense, including with DJ Reed. It's really looking, it looked well for the Jets in that game, but obviously for playoff implications, there's still a lot to play here. They pretty much control their own destiny for the most part right now. And for the Texans, CJ Stroud, once again, what more can he do, man? I mean, he's been putting this team on his back. DeMeco Ryans, don't get me wrong, there's been a culture change with this Houston Texans team. If we're going the worst to, probably one of the best teams in this foreseen future, but obviously, with Tank Dell missing the season with an injury, and then once again Nico Collins as well, losing a weapon for CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud as well with the concussion protocol. So his is day by day before Sunday. So obviously it's going to be a huge impact for this Texans team.
Yeah, above all else, hats off to Zach Wilson after everything he's been going through to be able to ball out like this. I mean, it definitely is commendable to see, and you love to see it after a guy's been through so much. Of course, let's get this into my game here. And I don't want to. This definitely won't be a rant, but I definitely do have a lot to say for this one. I mean, the guys played great. There's definitely. There was definitely good signs to see overall. Above all else, I'm gonna have to see. Stafford's definitely been playing some of his best ball of his career up to this point. These last couple games, ever since he came back from that injury, he's definitely been playing really solid. Keeping those turnovers down. That's always the big thing we talk about with Stafford, and he definitely played good. Another big takeaway here, I honestly gotta say, the secondary has to be one of our biggest targets going into the draft next season, because the secondary play has been absolutely horrendous in the past couple games, and it once again reared its ugly head right here. I've been praising Kendrick in the past couple games, and once again he comes to disappoint me. Killer Weatherspoon as well. It's definitely been they've definitely had some poor games as of late. I would say the O-line was a big target for the future as well, but there's been definite improvements, but the loss of Rob Havenstein was probably the biggest factor here. We had a lot of progression, but it was a pretty shitty game for the O-line here. And I'm not gonna get into the officiating being a big part of this, but at the end of the day, there was. I'm usually gonna say the Ravens O-line was holding a decent amount that wasn't getting called. Obviously, a big reason why we weren't able to get pressure on Lamar Jackson. The big missed PI whatever. I'm gonna let it go, but a pretty big missed PI in the end zone on that attempt to a game-winning drive at the end on Demarcus Robinson. And of course, I didn't even see it at first, but you brought it to my attention. The block in the back on the game-winning punt, pretty big right there. But look, in all reality, this is a damn good team. They're just unfortunately not good enough to actually, hang with look, we hang with good teams, just don't do enough to win the games.
Yeah, man, it was a great game regardless. Stafford, the offense was, pretty mid for the most part, but picking it up, good shootout, but obviously shot themselves in the foot at the end, and Baltimore just ran away with this one. Now moving on to our next game, which I'm gonna get through this really quick since it's one of the most boring games of the season. The Vikings and the Raiders. Come on, man. Sure, we got a scoregami 3, and I don't think it was scoregami, but it was a 3-0 game. But I think the story of this game was really just Josh Dobbs getting benched for Nick Mullins in the game, and also heads up for that, Nick Mullins, he will be the starter for the game on Sunday, so Josh Dobbs will be riding the bench. Um, his Linsanity run. I mean, all the jokes we've made and a lot of jokes everyone's been making. The short Linsanity run Josh Dobbs had, with the downfall, not downfall, with Kirk Cousins going down with the injury, and Josh Dobbs in the 2 games he was looking pretty well, and then obviously he just shits the bucket in the next couple ones. So obviously the Vikings, their hopes of playoffs, it's looking a little bit more slim. Hopefully Nick Mullins could, potentially, help him get back on track, but obviously it's not really a good sign here, especially with Jay Jettis once again leaving the game with an injury after coming back from his previous injury. So not a good look for Vikings fans. And for the Raiders, I mean, not much to say here. They couldn't get any points on the board. Aiden O'Connell, I mean, he's not the answer if we're being real here. I mean, I don't think he was the answer to begin with, but both sides of the ball hit him, the offense and the defense, not getting Adams. Like Adams was quiet the whole game. Obviously, I would understand, quarterback not really getting, getting too much time to throw the ball, but it would have been, good receiver like him, help him out, help with the pass game. But obviously it was just really sloppy football by both teams. Really sloppy football, and that field goal just really pretty much sealed the deal for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, definitely one of the worst games I've had to subject myself to in recent memory, but someone had to win at the end of the day. Of course, we'll move into game that was actually heavily entertaining here with the Bills and the Chiefs. Obviously, we know all the storylines, all the history that goes into this one, and I mean, this was definitely a much needed win for the Bills. I'm gonna there's a big piece to talk about here. I'm just gonna leave that for the end. But this was my highlight game. I obviously went with the Chiefs. We both went with the Chiefs, and I said it was gonna come down to the quarterback play, and I mean, for the most part, it did. I mean, sure, Josh Allen, he was streaky, of course. The interception narrative continues. It's it's still going to be something he's going to have to work at. But I mean, at the end of the day, he did enough. They went out to that 14-point lead. The defense did fail them once again. That's another big narrative that we do obviously get into a lot here. But as a whole, definitely had to say, Josh Allen did his part for the most part. But of course, getting to the Chiefs, I mean, the receiver issues continue. At the end of the day, Mahomes can only do so much. The guys like Sky Moore and Marquez Valdes-Scantling really don't scare you when you got to face them. I mean, at this point, you might as well just load up on tight ends when you got Travis Kelce and forget who else, but they definitely have a pretty good core of tight ends when you look at it. But of course, let's get into the big story of this game. The Kadarius Toney play. I mean, just definitely it's just disappointing to see from Mahomes the type of behavior he was showing to, I mean, just childish, man. It's just, I mean, you hate to see that from the face of the league. I mean, at the end, I mean, sure, he went in, he was apologizing for, you get, the emotions got the best of him, but I mean, it was just so stupid seeing him go up to Josh Allen at the end of that game. But it's looking pretty bad for the Chiefs as of late. They're really on that downward trajectory. It might be time to panic for them.
Yeah, this could be looking at the start of the Chiefs' downfall potentially, especially, with them barely being one game ahead of the Broncos. And, like you mentioned that, the ending with Josh Allen, like, bro was just trying to shake his hand, and Mahomes was having a little rant right there. But obviously, what more can you do? Now moving on to another division battle within the NFC West, the Seahawks and the 49ers. This game pretty much looked like it was going to go away with the 49ers. I mean, they were just getting that. They were just pounding that Seahawks team really good. I mean, Drew Lock got the start after Geno Smith was not starting due to an injury, and for the beginning, Drew Lock was looking pretty okay. I mean, it was a close game, tied at 7-7. It was looking good for the most part, and then the Niners obviously, they came back. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and then Brock Purdy once again. Who Brock Purdy is building up, a better MVP resume this season for this team. Obviously, him and Dak are the leaders right now. Lots of arguments you can make, but that's irrelevant right now. But once again, the Seahawks team dominating this. This 49ers team once again dominating the Seahawks team, and this was a win. The win that I really needed to get, especially for that 1 seed and seeding for the seeding potential, especially summer football once again going to bring that up. Lots of important games coming up in the next couple of weeks before playoffs, once the wild cards and the top 4 seeds are going to get announced. So obviously this was a great game all around for the 49ers. Not much you can say, but those three, I'm going to go back a little recap more. Those 3 straight losses that they suffered, they really picked it up from that. Brock Purdy, he's been looking really good for this team.
Yeah, obviously that's exactly big point for the 49ers. I mean, the Seahawks did keep it close for a certain point. I mean, they did seem to make it a game, but the 49ers did what they did best, and they just pulled away. Of course, let's move it into. I guess this was a pretty important game here for other seeding implications. The Broncos and the Chargers. Obviously, the Broncos making that really big push for the playoffs, and Russell Wilson once again. I mean, not the biggest number, not the best numbers, but 220 plus and 2 touchdowns. Definitely a great showing for him. Just overall. I did make it a point that I did expect Javonte Williams to have a decent amount of production. Obviously, not the craziest as well, but gets himself into the end zone. Definitely, for the fantasy points that I was talking about, was a pretty good call there. And as for the Chargers, it was definitely the story of the game. Justin Herbert's out for the year with that fractured finger. Did get surgery, I believe this morning, and after surgery it was concluded that he was gonna have to miss the year. So let's see who they are gonna roll with. They did pick up Max Duggan that they did draft earlier in the year. So I mean, we'll see if they actually decide to go back with him. He was a big part in the preseason, so obviously very familiar with the playbook. See what ends up happening there, but it's looking more and more bleak for the Chargers. Just the season just gets worse and worse, and I keep saying it every time it keeps going. I'm going to keep saying it. Brandon Staley got to go. I don't know what more you can say about this.
Yeah, there's really nothing much worse for this Chargers team that can get. I mean, their season's already wrapped. There's no way they can make a push for that. And then Brandon Staley, I'd be really, really surprised if he's not fired in this offseason. And now moving on to my game. Just how I expected this game. The Cowboys absolutely stampeded this Philadelphia Eagles team. And, scoring early, that's the big thing we need to do. Get on offense, score early against this Philadelphia Eagles team. And that's what that first drive, it was just chef's kiss, that first drive by Dak Prescott. And, another thing, too, getting to Hurts early as well. Hurts did not look, he was looking, like, off that game. You can tell from his facial expression, the way he's been playing, he was looking pretty off. Obviously, news there, a little injury related, not going to hold him on that. But he really wasn't looking like himself. That defense was really getting to him. It's really getting into his head. Offense wasn't producing. Defense was going to produce it. And I mean, yeah, Jordan Carter, I believe it was Jordan Carter that got that strip fumble on Dak. I don't remember if he returned it for the touchdown or was another player, but for your defense to score more touchdowns than your offense, let alone this Philly team that's supposed to be on top of the league, I mean, that's already saying like a slight regression already going on for this Philadelphia Eagles team. Jalen Hurts, I mean, lots of things going bad now, especially after getting embarrassed on national television. But with my Cowboys, once again, Dak Prescott being the narrative that we cannot beat teams over 500. Once again, staying at home, we're unbeaten at home, and this is what you like to see. CeeDee Lamb. And then Ferguson too at our tight end. He's really picked it up. He was really cooking this defense of the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was looking great. O-line was blocking, doing good. Aside from Terrence Steele, he's been he's pretty iffy, but other than that, it was a great game all around by this Cowboys team, and I'm very excited for him. What we can do is closing out the season, and once again, another guy, Tony Pollard. I know how you called him to have a pretty slump game. I don't blame you, but he was really picking it up once again, really getting to the head, and then Stephon Gilmore, the father of AJ Brown, he really got into his head. Now AJ Brown is showing frustration for the lack of production of this Philadelphia offense, but great game all around by my Cowboys team, and obviously another big game next week, which we'll get into in the preview. But Dak Prescott, he's got to be the MVP. Really got to be the MVP here.
Absolutely the front runner right now. I've been preaching it for a while, and he just keeps proving it. So I just had to wait and see how much more he can keep proving himself. Of course, we'll move it into Monday night. Got another doubleheader. We know how you feel about those. I don't really care about them. We'll just get it right into this. Definitely some big surprises here. This really put a dent into our predictions, and I mean, let's start with the Titans and the Dolphins, man. Let's just say right here, a statement win for Will Levis at this early point in his career. Obviously we were kind of starting to doubt him. Both of us. You from the start. I guess I started a little high on him, started to get low, but a win like this, I mean, still at the end of the day, it's one game. but it is against a pretty stout Dolphins defense. It might not be for this season, but it definitely shows a lot of potential for him moving forward. I mean, we saw DeAndre Hopkins did have, a lot of praise for him. It was just a phenomenal game for him. And I mean, don't have too much apart from that, but for the Dolphins, I mean, blow a 14-point lead under 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. We've been talking about the narrative of, they can't beat, above 500 teams. This was, used to be a pretty big narrative with the Cowboys, but now looking at this, not even against a team like the Titans, now you're gonna just an all-out collapse here. And I mean, sure, we can also attribute it in part, sure, to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, both having injuries since the first quarter. But I mean, a lot of this, a big part of this goes on that defense, but a big part of this really is going to go on Tua. That I don't want to put too much of the blame on him. I know he's missing a bunch of his pieces. I know his O-line is pretty injured right now, but this is a big point of emphasis for the Dolphins, and alarms could be ringing. It could be a bit of a panic. I'm not going to say too much, but it is a glaring loss here.
Yeah, honestly, this is something for this Dolphins to restart, panicking a little bit, but, starting to show a little bit more if this Dolphins can really produce after, and boost up Tyreek Hill's MVP resume a little bit, since it does show his value to this team and what happened when he did get injured and left the game for a bit. And now moving on to the final Monday nighter of the doubleheader, closing out week 14, and this was a game. I mean, let's start with Tommy DeVito, freaking Tommy Cutlets over here. He was having himself a game here. He was really cooking for this Giants team, really turning around this team all around. Obviously, the games they've been pretty mediocre teams, obviously, but obviously not gonna hold on. I mean, he was undrafted. Let's get this right here. Obviously, that pushes the narrative a little better for this Giants team, and could start looking at if Tommy DeVito could replace Daniel Jones in the offseason. Could it be a possibility? Yes, it is, but obviously it's gonna look really horrible on this Giants front office, especially after paying giving that huge buttload of money to Daniel Jones. Obviously, we talked about it a long time ago, but horrible signing, probably one of the worst signings in recent time. And this just looks bad on the Giants team, but obviously Tommy DeVito, he could possibly be another culture change with this Giants team after struggling in the recent years after the infamous yacht picture. Who knows? And Green Bay, closing out with Green Bay. I mean, they've been having a resurgence, beating the Kansas City. That was a huge momentum change, for this team. And Jordan Love, from how great he was playing, he just has a shitter against this Giants team, let alone against this Giants defense that really is not that good, if we're being honest, but they really got into the head of Jordan Love, and this whole Green Bay team was really not producing. Sure, Jordan Love not really having his main weapons here and there, but regardless of that, it's their playoff hopes are starting to look a little decline after this loss, especially some teams on the rise in this NFC.
Yeah, I mean, sure, with this loss, they still hold that 7th seed. We will just have to wait and see, but like we've been saying, it's very congested for the NFC playoff picture. Of course, that wraps us up for the week 14 recap. Let's get right into our prediction recap. And I mean, this was, haven't had a week below 500 in a while. Finally got us here. Lots of surprises, let's be honest here. Lots of surprises in our picks. And, obviously, we split our disagreements once again. I still hold my 3-game lead on you. So, of course, let's move this right into week 15. And Christian, obviously, like you said, got a pretty important game for your Cowboys.
Yeah. So, let's start off with this Dallas-Buffalo game. Last time we played Buffalo at home on Thanksgiving, it was a pretty dismantled Cowboys team. Buffalo Bills was really getting to us. Now this team is really, really different this season with, Dak Prescott finally picking up with this offense. Defense is looking great. Play calling with Mike McCarthy really improved after the past couple of weeks. It's been looking really, really phenomenal. But this is a very angry and a very great Bills team that's been on the rise since they've been struggling not that long ago. They've been great. Josh Allen's still picking it up a bit. Offense is looking pretty okay for the most part. Defense is finally getting on their heels. Only problem with Buffalo is, Josh Allen, the interception merchant. Obviously, the narrative continues for him. And then going up against this Dallas defense that's known for, committing turnovers. Josh Allen is going to really need to secure this ball, make a decision against this defense. But with the way the Dallas is right now, with Dan Quinn, his coaching, some defensive play calls. Don't get me wrong, it's a little bit questionable, especially a little bit too much soft coverage cushions on that. I would understand it, but for the most part, giving too much room, when it really needs to. That's where I kind of question Dan Quinn. But other than that, when it comes to the pass rushing, it looks phenomenal. I mean, we got to keep it going. The Dallas Cowboys, we need to win it. We need to finish out the season if we want to push for the 1 seed. Obviously, with Philly at least losing one more game, and obviously the Niners losing one more game, which it's not really asking for a lot, but is it possible? Yes, but obviously coming to this game, Dak Prescott, the way he's been playing, the way he keeps playing, getting CeeDee Lamb involved, and the other receivers, Tony Pollard getting a resurgence once again. Dallas can walk away with this one, and not so easy. It's going to be a good game, don't get me wrong, but it's really going to be a battle between Dak Prescott and Josh Allen.
Yeah, obviously, when you see the Bills really kind of on the rise once again, it's definitely going to be one of the better games for this week. Of course, into my Rams, once again, I'll be in attendance at SoFi and gonna get to see all the final 3 home games. And let's talk about this Commanders team that, sure, you could definitely overlook them. A lot of people kind of have, but I mean, we talk about it a lot. Sam Howell definitely has that big game capability. He's played up to the capability. We saw. I'm sure now we talk about the Seahawks in a different regard, but he played up to a great capacity against the Seahawks. He's just, we're making all the arguments that he definitely has the possibility to be the quarterback for the future for the Commanders. And that is, that's my key matchup for this game. I really I think it's going to be how the defense matches up with Sam Howell, how much we can contain him from that ability to play up to our level. And, as long as we do that, I mean, regardless, I believe this should be, overall, the way the Rams are looking right now, they should have the Commanders handled. I'm not expecting too much, but, regardless, they are a team that always puts up a fight. So, always have concerns there. My big concern is always just going to be that secondary, which, when we think, the ability that Sam Howell has, you have Terry McLaurin right there. You got other guys like Jahan Dotson, of course, but it all matters, how Witherspoon and Kendrick can really wake it up, see what they can actually do to bounce back in this game. Obviously you got guys like Kobe Durant and Trey Tomlinson, who they're in the corner, they're in the shadows. They definitely deserve a shot to if guys aren't going to be playing up to capabilities, definitely might have to give them a shot coming into this game.
Yeah, obviously your Rams, it's a game that they could win, but you are looking at a Washington team that's really pass heavy with Sam Howell. But obviously with young defense, it's gonna be a good game regardless. And now moving on to my highlight game of the week, which is Baltimore and Jacksonville, another AFC battle. And I think this is an important one for Jacksonville to kind of keep their division implications for the seeding as well, to keep it alive. But you're going against a Baltimore team that's really been on a huge resurgence, especially with Lamar Jackson and him leading this offense, and with the Bryson Zay Flowers, which is looking really good. And OBJ starting to kind of look like his old self again. But obviously not gonna get too much on that. But this is a must win, obviously, for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I obviously got Baltimore winning this game, but this is a must win for the Jaguars, let alone for the playoffs and their division title, because the AFC South, it's more wide open, as I talked about earlier. Trevor Lawrence, he's gonna have to pick it up, man. I mean, that last game, it was a big shitter. ETN, get ETN more involved early in the run game, and it's gonna be a great game for Jacksonville. But with this Baltimore defense, that's kind of the weak spot of this team. This defense is kind of, a little iffy there. The secondary, it could use a little bit more help, but obviously they still overlooked that, because the offense, it's able to pick up from that. But obviously it's going to be a great AFC battle, and it could go both ways, don't get me wrong, but with the way Lamar Jackson's been playing, it could be one-sided.
Yeah, obviously, you talk about the Jaguars, this being a must-win game for them. Gonna piggyback that into my highlight game in the Broncos and the Lions. We see the Lions they've kind of been playing their worst football once again. Ever since Thanksgiving, they've kind of been, back on a downward trajectory. This is definitely a must-win game, especially against a team in the Broncos. We've seen how much of a high-flying team they've been as of late. They've really, turned their season around ever since that horrible start. I think, a big matchup you got to see, ever since I talk about the Broncos, I always talk about Pat Surtain, and it's going to be how he can contain Amon-Ra St. Brown. And in all honesty, I think he's going to do a pretty good job. We see, like what we've been talking about, it's kind of been looking like a return of 2019 Goff. I think that trajectory is going to continue, and I think Goff's going to have a sloppy game, and I believe Pat Surtain is going to get an interception probably. And believe a close game regardless. But I mean, at the end of the day, I definitely got to see the Broncos coming out on top right here. But of course, that is going to wrap us up for our little preview for Week 15. And obviously, that's gonna wrap us up for the video as a whole. Obviously, definitely gotta show appreciation. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys can like the video, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you guys back for Bean Talk.